All right, we are working on our wicka wicka turntable sound effects. So I want you guys to join me wherever you are, and I want you to try wicka wicka. Try it. Let's do it together. Ready? Wicka wicka. All right, now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask, can I get a wicka wicka? And when I ask, can I get a wicka wicka, I want you to give it. I want you to feel it. Can I get a wicka wicka? Wicka wicka. All right, can I get a little tiny baby wicka wicka? Can I get a big wicka wicka? All right, you're doing pretty good. Here's the deal. Some turntable things where we learn something new and something different in the way we thought about something, because we do think about some things incorrectly or wrong. There's some wrong thought processes that we have. Some of those things that are wrong in our worldview and the way we think, and then the tables get turned when we learn a right way of thinking and a new way of thinking. Some of those are little things that maybe aren't all that important, a little something we learn that changes our life in a small way. Some of them just happen in the course of a day or in the course of a relationship, but some of them actually come from God. And when they come from God, I want you to know they're a big wooka wooka turntable moment. And when God gives us these moments with Him, He is reshaping our minds and the lens in which we engage in the world that we live in. And what a gift it is from Him. Our memory verse for this message series is found in Luke chapter 24, verse 45. And so I'd love for you to hear God's words coming out of your own mouth. So wherever you are, will you read this out loud with us? It says, "Then He opened their minds so they could understand the Scriptures." And this is the beautiful thing about God. When we encounter Him in the Scriptures, we're not doing that alone. We're reading the Scriptures with Him, and He opens up our minds so that we can see Him and encounter Him in fresh ways. The Scriptures that God has prepared, preserved, and now presented to us, where we get to encounter Him, they're alive and active, meaning it's a living word that God gives us. These words are alive. They speak to us in fresh and new ways. And so as we encounter God and meet with Him, we have the opportunity to do that prayerfully, and God opens our eyes and turns some things around that maybe we've had wrong, so that we can see some things in a right way, a little wicka wicka turntables. And so these are big, big things. And so we'll get a wrong, a right, and a turntable moment in this message. And so our wrong starts out like this, and it is a super common wrong, one of the biggest wrongs that we all experience and we struggle with. And we know it's wrong, and yet we keep falling into the same wrong thought pattern all the time. The wrong thought is, I've got to get all that I can. This is our wrong thought. I've got to get all that I can. Now, this is the way a lot of us, particularly in the cultural context that we live in this time and place, this is the thing that kind of gets put on us the most, is that the meaning of life is to get all the stuff you can. Like, we start to think and believe that next Amazon package on the doorstep will somehow complete us. If I could just get one more Amazon box, then I will feel complete. If just one more thing could be delivered, then I'll be complete. And we have houses with closets that are just jam full of stuff, and attic spaces and basements just jam full of stuff, and garages just jam full of stuff. So much stuff that we have to then go build storage facilities to house all the stuff that we didn't want to keep in our house. And yet we know that this is ridiculous and silly. And yet this consumption mentality and this accumulating, and we almost think it's our job. I mean, we've actually been taught this in many ways, that our job is to consume. Your job is to consume. Like, the best thing you can do when there's like a global health crisis is stay home and consume. This is your way to contribute. Be a consumer. Get more. And because of that, this becomes a mindset that starts to dominate our lives in ways that we're not even aware. I've got to get all that I can. Now, we're going to take a look at the Scriptures, knowing that Jesus can do a little wicka wicka turntable moment and help us understand them in a new way. We're in the Gospel of Luke, New Testament book that tells the story of Jesus in chapter 12. And just to set it up, I want you to know, here's Jesus. All right, let's talk about Jesus just for a moment. Jesus is here. He's come to earth. The Son of God, the maker of the heavens and the earth, the one whom through His voice in the beginning God spoke, and it was Jesus. We're told in the Gospel of John, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And so Jesus is the creator. He is the creative force of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. He is the one that with His voice spoke, and it was. He said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So just think about this. He is on earth in flesh, God in flesh and human form, and he came to preach good news to the poor. So the one who spoke everything into existence, and not only people and animals and trees and mountains and streams and oceans, but the stars in our universe and everything, is on earth, and he's speaking and giving good news to the poor. Now, if you, and that's all of us, by the way, all of us are the poor and the ones who need to hear and get to hear these words from Jesus. Now, could you imagine being there with God in flesh, Jesus, the Creator, the one who has spoken everything into existence, speaking and interrupting him? Does that sound like a good idea? And yet, somebody does this. And so this is the story that where we're going to start in Luke chapter 12, beginning in verse 13. It says, someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." And Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me judge or an arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." And then he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns, and I'll build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You," what? "Fool. This very night your life will be demanded of you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God." All right, so in this story, we've got Jesus preaching and sharing, and then you got this one jackalope who thinks what he has to tell Jesus is so important. And so you can almost just see it. He's like, excuse me, God in flesh, Creator of the universe, I'd like to make a request." He's like, "Oh, okay, buddy, what do you need?" "Tell my brother to split the inheritance with me." I mean, this is insane. Like, everybody in the place, like, around Jesus must have been like, "Come on, Chad. What are you doing, bro?" And this guy's, I mean, this is what he's consumed with. Now, we can, I think, see the craziness and the silliness of this situation as it's unfolding. But as I thought about that, I was like, yeah, I wonder how many times like Jesus has been speaking to me, or I've been in prayer and encountering him and have the opportunity to listen and hear from him and have some things turned around in my life. And I'm so busy telling him what to do, like, "Hey, make this happen. Give me this promotion, fix this problem, tell these people to get their act together, do what I want you to do." It's like we can turn a relationship with Jesus into like a one-sided negotiation where we're just telling him what to do all the time. And this story here is, just kind of interesting to see this. "Tell my brother to split the inheritance with me." And I love Jesus' response. It's like, "Man, who made me judge or arbiter between you?" Like this, you could ask me anything right now. And this is what you're concerned about, your inheritance and getting what you think you deserve or what you ought to have from your brother. And yet, this is very much the world that we live in. Even in the way we can approach Jesus, if we look at the way we pray and what we ask for, is this pretty indicative of some of the things we're doing? Make me healthy, wealthy, and wise. Gimme, gimme, gimme. I need more, I need more, I need more. Give me what I want. Make this happen. Because we can start to think that our lives really are revolving around consuming more. But what Jesus says is life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. What he's telling us very clearly, and we know it to be true, that's not life. Owning things is not life. In fact, so often, and this is kind of where Jesus' story here, the parable that he tells is a story. So often what happens is the things we think we own, they really begin to own us. I know it's a bit cliche, but it's true. They begin to own us because they dominate us. They control the way we think, what we do, how we behave, who we'll like. Think of how many relationships have just been utterly deteriorated and destroyed over possessions and money. It's crazy. Entire family dynamics, which is what's great about this, the family dynamic is the parents are dead, the father is gone, so tell my brother to split the inheritance. I mean, there are entire families that I've seen over the years many, many times. It's such a common thing, who fight over trinkets and stuff and inheritance. And even as I say that, you may be going, yeah, but you don't understand the dynamic of my family, and you don't understand how much it is. Look, it's all trinkets and stuff. And yet, how often do we choose trinkets and stuff over people and God? And what Jesus says is life does not consist in the abundance of possessions, but we've got it all wrong. We think I have to get all I can. I've got to be a real go-getter. It's my job to achieve and accumulate and build. And so Jesus is like, yeah, I get it, guys. This is kind of what you're wrapped up in. So he says, let me tell you a story. And this story is about this guy, a certain rich man. And that's the way it goes. Like, whenever you're rich, you never think of yourself as rich. It's very rare for someone to ever be like, oh, yeah, no, I'm rich. I mean, I talk to people all the time, and they're like, yeah, those rich people. I'm like, dude, you fly private planes. Like, and I've told my kids the same things. They'll say something about, well, those rich people. I'm like, kids, you need to understand, we are the rich people. Like, we're some of the richest people who have ever lived on this planet, but you're always looking somewhere else and going, these people have more, because we think that's what we need and that somehow will make us happy and satisfied, but it never works. The accumulation of possessions never works, because no matter how rich you are, you think, I need to have more. And that's what this certain rich guy does, is he's rich, and so he plants his grain, and he got more grain. You ever notice that? That's what the rich get what? Richer. Well, because that's their goal, that's their object. And now he's got more grain, and he's like, what am I going to do with all my grain? I know what I'll do with all my grain. I'll tear down my barns, because my barns aren't big enough to hold all my grain, and I'll build bigger barns. And now he's got bigger barns, and he's like, oh, there it is. And once I'm done with my bigger barns and I've got all my grain inside my bigger barns, then I'll sit back, eat, drink, and be merry. And Jesus says, you fool. Like, you're going to die tonight. And that's the thing. The end is always near. We never think it is. Like, I know, it's almost like we think if we can get rich enough and have enough possessions, then there's no way we could ever die. Because everybody knows rich people don't die, right? I mean, that mortality rate still hovers right at 100% if you weren't aware. Everybody dies. And yet the accumulation of possessions is a total wasted life, is what Jesus is saying here. And yet we are so eager to get into this trivial thing, like I'm going to have more stuff and that will somehow make me complete or whole. But what Jesus is saying is like, hey, there is another way. Instead of doing this, you could be rich towards God. Like you can live a life that is full of purpose and meaning. In fact, even like to the guy who was like, tell my brother to divide my inheritance, it's almost like Jesus was saying, dude, like you could have heard some really cool stuff from me. Like I was about to share some stuff with you guys, and all you're concerned about is money. And yet Jesus does address it. And so he addresses this wrong idea that says, I've got to get all I can. Now let's look at what's right. What's right is this: God gives me all that I need. In fact, I want us to say that out loud. Let's try it. Say it out loud. God gives me all that I need. That did not sound convincing. I want you to hear this. God gives you all that you need. God gives me all that I need. Let's say it like you mean it. God gives me all that I need. Is that true? Because if that is true and that is right, then so much of what we freak out about, what we're angry about, what we're stressed about, what we make ourselves sick over is completely ridiculous. God gives me all that I need. I didn't say, and I don't think God ever said this either, God gives me all that I want. And so as he's moving right here, taking us from a wrong way of thinking to a right way of thinking, ultimately, if we can get this right with him, where we recognize, wait, God gives me all that I need. And if God gives me all that I need, then I can trust him. And if I trust him, then God can change what I want. Because here's what we want. We want life. We want life abundantly and life to the full. We want to live. We want to enjoy. I mean, even like the guy in the story is like, then I can sit back, eat, drink, and be merry. But he didn't enjoy anything. He was just building barns. Build a barn, tear a barn down, build a bigger barn, tear it down, build a bigger barn. Same story we see in life after life after life after life, and it's not a life well lived, it's just a life of death. And yet what Jesus is saying is, okay, life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. He's going to say, I've got real life for you. And so God is the giver of life. He is the originator of life. Jesus created life. He also gives us new life because he takes all of our death, our sin inside of him, the things we've done and the things that were done to us, and he put them to death in his body on the cross, and they were buried with him in the tomb, and on the third day, he rose again. He rises to new life, and so this is the life that he offers us, a new life in him that is an eternal life, where we don't have to worry about death. And why are we worrying about life when here's the life giver? So if we continue reading here, that God does indeed give me all that I need. The next verse, verse 22, it says, Then Jesus said to his disciples, Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable are you than birds? Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about all the rest? Consider how the wildflowers grow. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it. For the pagan world runs after all such things, and your Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom, and all these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Jesus says, okay, therefore I tell you, now he's going to be like, okay, think about like this guy who's interrupting me and asking this question and telling me to tell me what to do, to tell his brother to divide the inheritance. And think about this guy with the barns. He just spends his whole life building barns, building barns, building barns. He's like, all right, let me tell you the truth here. And I wonder if at that moment like a raven flew by. Because I think this is Jesus. I mean, like, he's just like, how do I explain it? Okay, like the raven flies by, and he's like, okay, like think about a raven. They don't have barns, and yet your Father feeds them. God takes care of them. And maybe there were some flowers growing, and he's like, look at the wildflowers. Look at them. Look how beautiful they are. Not even Solomon, King Solomon, one of the richest men who's ever lived and been on the face of the earth, and all the things that King Solomon had. Not even Solomon comes close to being dressed like these wildflowers. And then Jesus lays these great words like, don't be afraid. Because that's really what happens is we get afraid. If we have this wrong attitude that says, I've got to get all I can, then we're constantly afraid that I don't have enough. If I have to get all that I can, then I'm constantly afraid that I don't have enough. And if I don't have enough, then I'm not enough. And if I'm not enough, then I'm not good enough. And if I'm not good enough, then I can't be with God. And oh my, wow. We've missed the point completely. That our way to God comes through a relationship with Jesus. And he has made a glorious and wonderful way. And yet we keep going back to this achievement-based mindset that says, I'm going to earn my way. Even trying to escape our need for grace by saying, I don't need anything. I am totally okay and completely all right on my own because I somehow have everything. I mean, look at my giant barn. You fool. And Jesus says, you don't have to be afraid. And so here is a question we get to wrestle with. Am I going to worry or am I going to worship? Worry or worship? Because I'll tell you right now, worry destroys worship. When we're worried about things, like that guy in the crowd, I know I made fun of him a little bit, but this dude's worried about something. I mean, this is weighing heavy on him. He's got to get what he deserves. It's his, and his brother's not giving it to him. And so he can't possibly enjoy the presence of Jesus and hear what Jesus has to say because he's consumed with this worry about what he has to get. Jesus, tell my brother to give me my share of the inheritance. You ever been in a place where you wanted to worship and you couldn't because you're so worried? So worried about what's going on. And so here's a few questions to wrestle with. Will I worry about clothes or worship the God who gave me my body? I just want you to think about that. Am I going to worry about clothes? And maybe you're like, I live in New Hampshire. I gave up on fashion 20 years ago. I know. You can step it up a little. But are we going to worry about clothes or worship the God who gave us our bodies? Look how he clothes us. These incredible bodies that he gives us. And even these are temporary. These don't last. These bodies will die and there'll be no more. But that essence of who we are that God has made, he provides us with everything we need. And there is so much more to life than clothes. Will I worry about food or worship the God who provides daily bread? The one who created food to begin with. The one who, even as he talks about like the ravens, I mean, this is how God does like to provide. It's a reminder that we're not in control. That's where so much of this, I have to get it all. I have to have all the possessions. I have to win. I have to be in control. I have to have more than somebody else. I have to have more than other people in my family. I have to have more than my neighbors. I've got to be in control. This will be my security. This is just another God situation here. We're looking to possessions to give us what only God can give. And the truth is, God will meet all of our needs and provide for all of our needs. And those possessions are inanimate objects that do not last. You can't take them with you. And so am I going to worry about food or worship the God who gives me daily bread? Will I worry about time or worship the God who is eternal? We get really wrapped up on this. I don't have time. I'm too busy. There's not enough time to do the things that I thought I was going to get to do, and I need more time. And we get so stressed about that, and we run around like crazy, missing out on the beauty that is happening all around us because we're just so fixated on being in control. Or we could worship. Worship means to exalt, by the way. To exalt, to lift up. It's to recognize God's presence. That's why I love this particular posture of worship, hands up. And in fact, I want you to try this. Like if you want to worship Jesus, can you put your hands up? If you're online and driving, yeah, let's try. Go for it. This is worship. And just like look up and say, God, there you are. Oh, and you are greater than me. And you give me everything I need. I'm telling you, when you get in this position right here, it's like a love funnel. God lavishes his love. And it pours into us, and he fills us to a measure of all fullness. And in those worship moments, if you've experienced them before, maybe you just experienced it right now in doing that together. When you experience that, you go, oh, he does give me everything I need. I forgot. And so the next time you're worried about clothes or food or time, possessions, just go, God, there you are. You're greater than me. You give me everything I need. God, there you are. You're greater than me. You give me everything I need. And this worship dominates worry. It is so much stronger. It is life-changing. So God gives us everything we need. Now, we get our wicka turntable. True power is found in serving, not being served. So a lot of times what's going on here is there's a great power struggle that's happening. And when we feel powerless, we get afraid and worried. And when we feel powerless, then we try to get control. And so we look for a situation or a dynamic where we can have that control and get others to serve us and somehow have the power to tell them what to do. We see these dynamics played out in workplaces and public forums and households and families all the time. But true power, ultimate power, the power of God, is manifested in Jesus. And the Son of Man, Jesus, did not come to be served, but to serve. And so the very next verse is really a continuation of the same thought. Jesus tells them in verse 34, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Then 35, he says, okay, so be dressed, ready for service, and keep your lamps burning, like servants waiting for their masters to return from a wedding banquet, so that when he comes and knocks, they can immediately open the door for him. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. Truly, I tell you, he will dress himself to serve and will have them recline at the tables and then come and wait on them. This is a total wicka turntable moment. Jesus continues on the same thought. He says, okay, be dressed, ready for service. You're all worried about clothes, about having control and power and being greater than and dominating and winning and accumulating and everything else. Now take the nature of a servant and watch for the master to return, because you're not the master. God, there you are. You are greater than me. You give me everything I need. And if we are to clothe ourselves with Christ, as the scriptures remind us, clothe yourselves with Christ, then we are putting on the clothing of a servant. The one who came and laid down his life for us. Who gave his life for us. And so we are able to take this nature that God gives us as he puts his Holy Spirit inside of us and transforms and changes us from the inside out. This new identity on the inside that says, okay, wait a minute, I am complete, I am whole. God does love me. God is for me, not against me. God has made a wonderful way for me to be an adopted child, a son or daughter of the King of Kings, and to have a place in his kingdom. And that's the very thing Jesus says. He's like, you've been given the kingdom. You have a place in the kingdom. You're not earning a better place in the kingdom. It is established by the King, and it is given to us as a gift. So go ahead and take the nature of a servant. And be willing to serve. And know this is not some lame pitch to come serve in our programs at one church. Please, for the love of God, I'm dead serious here. Don't replace being a servant with the activity of serving in an event. Serve your spouse, serve your kids, serve your siblings, serve your coworkers, serve your boss, serve people who absolutely don't deserve it, serve people you don't want to. Because it's who you are. And then, when that overflows into an activity or something that we may be doing as a church and there's an opportunity to express that as a part of one church, sure, have a ball, enjoy every moment of it. But this is where true power is. And what Jesus says is when the master comes, he's going to put on the clothes of a servant. And you'll recline at the table and he'll serve you. Which is exactly what we do in every single worship service we have. We recognize our total and complete need for Jesus. We recognize that we need his forgiveness and we're desperate for his grace. We recognize that he is for us, not against us, and that no matter who you are, no matter what you've done or what's been done to you, that Jesus will do this. We recognize that. And then we sit at a table and Jesus comes and he serves us. And that's why every time we gather together or have a worship service, we share in communion. We remember how Jesus has served us by giving his life for us. He took bread and broke it, and he offered it to his friends, just like he offers it to you now. And he said, this is his body, which is broken for you or given for you. Take and eat, all of you. If you're saying yes to Jesus, then let's receive this from him. And Jesus also took the cup. He said this cup represents a new relationship, a new covenant that he is making with everyone. When we drink from this cup, we drink to the King of Kings, recognizing that we are not the King, but he is, but the King has come and done this for us, to the King. I'd like to pray a simple blessing for you, and if you're willing to open up your hands in an attitude of worship and just receive from God, he will give you everything you need. Father, there you are. You are greater than us. You give us everything we need. Lord, let us receive from you right now, and we ask that in Jesus' name.